Welcome to the Woke Wild Women's podcast. I'm Roxanne Sailors.
And I am Bethany Evans.
And today we're interviewing one of my heart sisters, Tanya Storm. It seems like when you get down to it, most women don't talk regularly or openly about our sexual identity, who we are as sexual women. And it can be dangerous also to fully open and own our sexual power as women, especially in other parts of the world. We're really fortunate here in the United States. We're a little bit more open. Western culture is more accepting, but there's a lot of people out there that it's dangerous. Anyway, Tanya, you own your sexuality so wholly and completely and with such joy. And it really has enlightened me on how I view my sexuality. And I'm just so excited to hear more about kind of how you came into your sexuality and how it informs the rest of your life.
Aw, I like hearing that. I'm glad that that's actually been helpful for someone else other than just me and all those very lucky men.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. I know for myself, sexuality was definitely a taboo subject and pretty much like undesirable. The way I was raised was that I should downplay my sexuality. It was evil, bad, something to hide. And so, Tanya, you and I have talked about that, and you have a very different experience. So why don't you just start with kind of how you were raised and how you felt?
I wouldn't say I had a very different experience. I think it was mostly just not talked about. So I didn't have too much of the shame layered on it. I was just kind of left to my own devices on it for the most part. My family of origin is Southern Baptist. So you can imagine it wasn't exactly all orgasms and vibrators in my house. It was definitely like just kind of not discussed. But I think I'm just a natural, as strange as that sounds. Like
I think most women are. I don't know. I feel like it's just innate in our nature. So
I know what you mean. Like I think I discovered, the word masturbation has all of this like weird stuff around it. Apparently it means self-abuse. So I try not to use the word. Yeah. Huh. Masturbation basically means self-abuse.
Interesting.
Damn, I don't know about you, but that don't feel like abuse. So
no, it does not.
I try to say like self-love or something, self-pleasure, things like that. So sometimes I forget to use the other word, but anyway, I kind of found it out when I was very young. I think I was like 6 or 7 and just sort of discovered it and was like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it had any, I didn't know what sex was. Didn't really know sex existed. Had no idea it had anything to do with sex. And so I wasn't discriminate about how I did it.
Yeah.
I didn't know. And so after my parents noticed this a few times, they were like, and props to mom, they're like, you tell us about what's going on there. And instinctively I lied. Like, I don't know, some part of me knew like, this is not something that you can be totally open and honest with your parents about. And so I was like, oh, I had an itch. And that was like how I scratched it. Which is totally the truth, but in a way I didn't yet understand. And so then my mom was like, well, you need to do that in your room. And I was like, okay. But then, I forgot or totally disregarded that at some point. And then it became, you just need to not do that. I think they just weren't quite sure what to do with me, which I was just like, I think she really means I need to do this in my room. So I didn't really take too much stock in it. And then at some point, I think my grandmother noticed, and now she was Southern Baptist. And she told me something about sin and God, and that got up in my head. I thought, I wonder if that's real. And I wasn't really given a strong religious upbringing, but I wasn't given a non-religious upbringing. I'm not really sure what I'd even call my upbringing there. And so I was toying around with the idea that, okay, that's a bunch of bull, but maybe it's true. And so I would sometimes make promises to God, like, okay, if you don't let this thing happen or you make this thing happen, I will never do that again. And that lasted like 3 seconds usually. So wasn't really good at that one. But also along the way, I discovered things like, oh, my mom had a book about sex, which I pilfered whenever I possibly could and read it. And my dad had nudie magazines, which once again, I pilfered and read whenever I possibly could. And I've just always like been drawn to pleasure in all areas of my life. Sex is just one of them. And been just interested in that topic as a topic, and then of course as an action too. And so I don't think even any kind of upbringing would have kept me from being who I am. But thankfully I wasn't had tons put upon me, but it wasn't really open either. So somewhere in between there, I'd say the driving force was just me and being a very pleasure driven person.
Did you notice that you were different in that way growing up? Like different from your, like, did you ever talk about sex or sexuality with your girlfriends or?
Well, it's a girlfriend who actually taught me that this was a thing when I was like 6 or 7. So I thought it was totally normal. I told all my other girlfriends about it. I was like, hey, guess what? If you do this thing, you get this really cool feeling.
Yeah.
So like, oh my God, it's true.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is just, I mean, I had like an innate sense that really this wasn't something to go blabbing to mom and dad about. But I didn't think it was abnormal in any way.
I honestly think it's more normal for boys and girls to do that when they're kids, to just explore, you know, and it's not unless you get caught doing it or seen that you get shamed for it, because it makes the parents really uncomfortable. You know, that's really what it is. That's why we get shamed for it, because they don't know, like you said, your parents didn't know how to handle it.
No, and I'm a parent and I don't know how to handle it.
Right?
Even now, like
I know.
A child under 10, and it's kind of like sometimes that and I get like, oh God, what do I do? What do I say? I'm so insane. And like, it's like, how do we get past that? I'm really not sure. I still struggle with that. I haven't been able, or I haven't needed to have the full on sex convo yet, but eventually it's coming, and I have to like, deep breaths and really put on a face for those kind of conversations, because they make even me uncomfortable.
Yes.
So I practice on Roxanne and Charlene a lot.
Good. So I'm curious, sorry, Roxanne, I'm curious how you dealt with it since your children are older, you know?
Me?
So how did you deal with that with your kids?
Oh my God. Not a lot. We established the difference between secrets and privacy. So if somebody's telling you to keep a secret, that's not okay. You know, we have things that are private in our family. And, you know, that was one of those things, you know, that feels good. But that's a private thing. So that's something you do by yourself in your room, or in the bathtub or bathroom or whatever. But we tried not to shame them for any kind of action. It's just like, that action's not appropriate to the environment right now. And then as my kids got older, I mean, as you both know, and I think we've discussed a little on the podcast, my oldest child is transgendered. And so and we're really, really close. And so they came to me with their first sexual experiences, and we were able to talk about it and just kind of explore. So I just tried really hard to be non-judgmental and ask inquiring questions. And, you know, there's still so much of it that I barely talked with my son at all about sex. Although as he's getting older, I'm more like insistent, like, here's what you need to do for your partner to feel safe with you. And
yes, that's awesome.
Oh gosh, that is awesome. And I'm also imagining him being like, come on.
Actually, my ex-husband is, he started them young, trying to embarrass them at every turn. And so I'm kind of immune to embarrassing. Like, they'll just roll their eyes and just be like, oh, Mom, whatever. Because they're so used to that. I mean, we would try to embarrass them by hugging and kissing them in front of their friends. Oh,
that way,
saying, I love you, honey, and things like that. And talking about weird stuff. And and then I had 2 teenagers when I met my current husband. Awesome. So they're, you know, they got an earful. I've always been very sexual. Like that's a regular part of my relationships. So my kids heard stuff.
Right?
I heard them.
Oh my God.
Dude.
I just don't have any paradigm for this yet. Oh Lord.
Yeah. But it was just kind of in that world, it was kind of don't ask, don't tell. I think if I were to do it again, I would definitely have conversations around it. So
yeah. Yeah.
And Tanya, you have been talking with your daughter about sexuality in little bits and pieces.
Little bits and pieces. But yeah, the guide seems to be when they show curiosity or when they're 30. So she's not 30. She hasn't shown a ton of curiosity around the topic yet, but I just kind of look for whenever she does. I welcome it. I mean, Roxanne, if I can create an environment where my kids will talk with me about their first sexual experiences, or my kids, I just have one, I will be like winning as a parent in my mind anyway, because I definitely didn't have that. I couldn't go talk to my mom about that. Like, had the pregnancy scare as a teenager and thought about telling my mother and was like, hell no. There is no way that's safe. And so I want that to be something where she would feel safe talking to me about that. So kudos to you for creating that. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. And I see that.
Own it.
Own
that.
Thank you. It's hard for me to take credit for my kids. Like they are who they are in spite of me in a lot of ways.
But you created that space for them to be who they are. So
I just it like in a really not in a not weird way. I just never wanted them to leave me. I wanted to always be connected to them. And I knew from my relationship with my mother that there would come a time when there needed to be a separation, but I wanted to keep the relationship evolving. And so I had to step out of the mom role and become more of a guide.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's I
a
think
little
the
less
healthy way to
caretaking,
parent.
a little more. Yeah.
And awesome.
So Tanya, I'd like to talk a little bit more about kind of how you relate to yourself as a sexual being in other areas of your life. So we talked a little bit about your relationship with your daughter and how that works. How about as you are in and exploring relationships? Because you had some terrible dating days.
I have explored some relationships, so it's a good word for it, over the last year and a half, for sure. One thing just from being me, from doing reading, from following certain people like on Instagram who really interest me in the way they talk about things, I've learned over the last couple of years. I'm divorced, so I've been divorced for going on 3 years now, but I've learned that my sexuality is mine, and that is the major thing that I have come to understand, because being raised as a girl and then a woman in this culture, you feel often like your sexuality is supposed to belong to other people. So it's like, oh, you're dressing that way, it's provocative, you're disturbing the boys,
you're trying to get attention,
whatever, you're trying to get attention. Oh, you're being sexy for me. So this whole idea of all that, it's like when I came to start to understand, no, my sexuality is mine. I'm being sexy because I want to be sexy. I'm dressing in this particular way because it feels good to me, or because it's hot. Jeez.
Yeah.
Because I have great legs.
Because we can't walk around naked.
Yeah. Because there's no hiding big boobs, It's like, what am I supposed to do? So just the idea that it's mine, and I can choose how I want to display it or not display it. And so in relationships with people, that's helped me make decisions about whether I want to have sex with them. It's kind of like, I'm never having sex with them because, especially that first time, and you're new in a relationship and you're deciding, am I ready to go there? Am I not ready to go there? It comes down to, am I ready to go there? And of course, are they ready? But they're boys, so they're always ready. Let's be honest.
To be ready.
That's been my experience. But kind of been like, okay, just make sure I'm doing this because I want to do it, and I can handle the consequences of whatever happens on the other side of that. And so I would say that's kind of how it's informed it. It's been like, well, do I want this experience? Do I want this experience with this person? And sometimes I don't care about anything beyond that. And sometimes I care about, what will that do to this, newly developing relationship? Is it ready for what this brings? So I guess But the idea of it belonging to me is the crucial thing. And that's what I love. And the other piece of that, I mean, just to kind of tangent slightly, is that your turn on belongs to you. So in a partnership, in a marriage, the whole idea of, well, I'm just not turned on, so I don't want to have sex. It's kind of like, it's your job to turn me on. Well, yeah, that's nice. It's great when they turn you on, but sometimes it's your job to turn you on. So it's kind of like, I want connection. I want that deep connection that sex brings, but I'm not particularly sexually turned on. Maybe I'll go get myself ready and then go pounce on him because rather than waiting on him to come to me and like, oh, you got to get me ready. It's just like, turn yourself on. What turns you on? And then carry that turn on into other aspects of your life. So like, I'm really turned on by doing a great job at work. Now, this doesn't mean I'm like necessarily having sex at work, obviously, but it's just like that whole idea of just bringing that excitement, that turn on, that just vital life force into other pieces of your life. I feel like if I'm not having sex with anyone or myself, that's missing for me. So there's just a vitality, a powerfulness, an energy, a spark, a joy that comes with being actualized in that way. And that doesn't require a partner, and that doesn't require you to do gymnastics in bed. It just requires you to give your sexuality an outlet, and welcome it and embrace it and own it.
Yeah. And I think that's, it can be scary for some people because it's really powerful. And I didn't discover, believe it or not, I didn't discover masturbation until I got divorced.
What? Wow. I was very like,
I've always been a very touchy person. Like I've always touched myself, but I was told enough times like to stop sticking my hand down my pants that I didn't.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had a lot of sexual exploration when I was younger and like right up until I was like 10, 11, like starting puberty, and then it just done. And then that was interesting that you said, Tanya, about owning your sexuality, owning your turn on, because I got married really young and I did turn my sexuality over to my husband in a huge way until I realized that it actually was mine. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for us. But I have found for myself now, when I'm feeling really stuck, sometimes self-pleasure is what gets me unstuck. It just, it gives me that boost of, what did you say? Oxytocin for girls. And
oh, we get more than that. I think we get oxytocin, we get vasopressin, we get dopamine, serotonin.
But didn't you say that men get more
women get more oxytocin because we're just like, you know, I want to cuddle you. Men get more the dopamine, like the reward center. They're like, yeah, give me more. Drugs. Sugar, coffee, drugs.
Gotcha.
Orgasms.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Hey, those are my favorite things right there. Minus the drugs. Not really.
Which is why people get addicted to all those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Where was I?
You were saying you turned your sexuality over to your husband.
Oh, yeah. So just, I think a lot of women are afraid of that power. Like
totally.
Not knowing what to do with that power. So, and I love that you touch on it. It does touch into your work life. And, you know, can you break that down a little bit more for us? Like explain your process, which you're probably not even thinking about. You're just doing, but like if you're feeling stuck in a relationship or, and not even just a romantic relationship, but like a business relationship or, you know, how does your sexuality play into other things besides actual sex?
You know, I really haven't given that a ton of thought. Like, it's definitely not something happening between my ears. So that takes a little more.
So it's more about developing that relationship with your pussy.
Yes, I was going to say
the
book Pussy, which we read and talked about. He talks about like checking in with that thing and asking it, what do you? It's in that, you know, they say check in with your gut. Well, maybe there's something else to check in with, or maybe that's kind of like your gut in this way. and just sort of, it's also like, it's your sacral chakra to get woo woo. I mean, that area is your sacral chakra. And I always say I'm sacral powered, because it definitely feels like a source of power for me. And when I feel really cut off from it, then I feel sort of like my light is dimmed. Like things are a little grayer. They're not in Technicolor, which I would say I'm generally a Technicolor person. But things are not in Technicolor when I'm cut off from that. And so, sometimes it's as simple as like, gosh, I need to go like have self-pleasure practice today or something. Because I'm just feeling like nothing else is going to do it. And sometimes I'd rather have that than a partner, to be honest, because it's just, I don't have to worry about anybody but me. And I know exactly what I like. Exactly. And I always feel really great afterwards. And, you know, there's not really anybody to cuddle, but that's okay. I can handle that. But I'd say, I mean, literally sometimes I'm like, okay, life is too much. I'm going to bed with myself. I'm not going to bed to go sleep, you know? So that is helpful. But otherwise, just feeling when I'm feeling kind of drab and cut off, and knowing that that is a source of power to check into, to listen to. I mean, even doing something is just kind of, I'm not a big meditator. I feel failed in that area of my life. I have a really hard time with it, but I can sit there and close my eyes and breathe and think about different parts of my body and tap into the sacral. I mean, I can feel the power there. That is a woo thing that I have been able to fully embrace, is like just feeling, I can just feel like there's an energy, a power, a throbbing energy that comes from there, from me. But if I can like pull it up into other parts of my body and take it out into the world, there's nothing I can't do. Like, it is powerful.
Yeah.
It's available. It's right there. Just a matter of recognizing it, communicating with it, making friends with it, tapping into it. All of these are very fun things to do.
Great. So speaking of that, let's get into some nuts and bolts. Why, when, how? Like, what does your sexual practice look like? Where do you get your toys? Because I know that you are a fine curator of many toys.
Yes. Roxanne and my other friend were at my house the other day, and a box comes, and I'm like, "Ooh, a box!" And then, was it you or Charlene who was like, "Oh, what is it? A sex toy?" And I don't say anything, and then I go open the box, and it's a sex toy. I'm like, you people know me too well. I was gonna surprise you. Sometimes from Amazon, and then there's this company called Bellesa, Bell. I can't remember if there's 2 L's or 2 S's, but Bellesa. And so they have really nice toys, and they also have cultivated porn for women, which is nice. So, and like, they have little, I don't know about you, but I love write-ups. So before I invest my time in looking at a video, I can actually read what's going to happen in that video. And I actually appreciate that.
Yes, you're like, you don't have to go through the video to see if you're going to like it.
And they're even categorized. Like, this one is soft and sensual. This one is passionate and intense. This one is rough and wild. What are you in the mood for today?
Exactly.
And so, and the whole thing is built around, everyone is supposed to display women's pleasure and not exploitation. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, totally.
When I tend to be an afternooner person, definitely.
It's like that afternoon cup of coffee.
Yeah,
to give you that boost, right?
So with a partner, I'm definitely not a late night person in general, and that's a struggle because, you know, most folks just want to go to bed and have sex. I want to go to bed and go to sleep. So it can be challenging. I have to sort of like maybe drink a little coffee at 8 o'clock in order to manage that at 10 o'clock at night, because I'm just pooped and ready to sleep at night.
But what about morning?
You know, I can be convinced in the morning, but
you don't need it.
I don't. It's honestly not generally wired that way. It is like, if I got my pick, it would be most every afternoon, and generally afternoon.
Afternoon delight. So,
but, you know, I welcome other times if that's all that's available. And if it's just me, I work from home, which is super awesome for your personal sex life.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm home alone every afternoon, and if I feel like it, I can go enjoy self-pleasure to my heart's content. Now everyone at work knows what I do at lunch. I'm like, BRB, going to lunch. Winky face eggplant emoji from now on, I guess.
That's awesome.
Oh, man.
It's also the best way to ever manage to get a nap if you need one. I always pull out a wet nap.
Wet nap.
A wet
nap.
Oh, I love it.
A wet nap, because it's like, it just relaxes you and it makes you like, okay, now I can go to sleep. So yeah. I think
have you ever used it for like when you're in pain? Like when I'm on my period and I have really bad cramps, like sometimes that's the only thing that makes me feel better.
It is true. You're right. I went through like a really bad back pain episode recently. Roxanne knows all about that, and she suffers with the same thing sometimes too. And it was like, I mean, I was in a ton of pain. We were on vacation at a romantic place, me and my guy, and I was in a ton of pain, and couldn't even think about that for like the first day. But the second day, I was kind of like, do you think we could figure out a way? And he's like, are you going to be okay? And I was like, I think so. And we did. We figured out a way. And then after it was over, I like stood up and walked to the bathroom. He's like, are you just like fine now?
Like, that's all I needed.
Like, I just barely needed an orgasm. Yeah. I mean, it's not 100%, but I'm like 50% recovered just from that. So, I mean, it does release all these incredible hormones in your body.
Right.
And releases a lot of tension. And so if back pain or another kind of pain is ever caused by like really tense muscles pulling things out of place, of course your hormones that dull pain are probably in the toilet when you're feeling crappy and not moving at all. So you're not getting endorphins from movement. You're probably not eating that great. You're probably not sleeping that great. So if you can manage that when you're in that, it is a nice way to take care of yourself. And it might even help you sleep.
Yeah. I'd say for me, emotional pain too. Like if I'm in like, if I feel pent up emotionally, like I know I need to release that energy.
Release. That is definitely true. It is.
That's something I just came to realize about myself, like this within the last year too, is like, I don't, I've been like talking to men and like seeing men, how they like masturbate every day. And I was like, you guys do that. Like, that's smart. Like I should probably follow that. Because I tend to not, like, I let it build up too much sometimes, where and I'm not doing it every day. And then I need it. Like I need a lot of it,
Yeah. That's awesome that you understand like that it helps you. So
yeah.
One of those instantly rewarding things. Not everything in life is instant gratification, but it's nice like that.
That is, huh?
And I'm all for like sex toys. Like try different kinds. Try maybe like an external, like a wand, as if you've never tried one before as a starter, just try that, and then move on to something smaller internally, or bigger, depending on which way you want to go with that.
Yeah.
Bring them in with your partners. If at all possible. I have never had a partner be freaked out when I whip out the sex toy and I'm like, here, use this.
Totally.
I've been known to do that like the first time we have sex too. And so it's sort of like a mini test. If they run screaming, it's like, yeah, you go ahead anyway, hon.
Nice.
But yeah, like it's definitely, and I think some men might be threatened by it, but that's more about them than you.
Oh, totally.
That's just a chance to have a conversation and say, this is not a replacement for you. This is just an add-on, or this really gets me off a lot easier than some other things. And so, I don't know. In my experience, men seem to really like that idea, like to watch it, like to participate in it. So if you can,
I find the difference between, I mean, how do I put this? Men who enjoy watching you get off are usually a lot more generous and giving in general. Yeah. And it's not just, I mean, it's always kind of been the policy. If like, if I go, you will always go.
Exactly.
Like,
yep.
As long as you take care of me first, you can do whatever, I mean, within reason, but you can pretty much do whatever you want to me.
Exactly. That's so true.
And of course, this applies to female relationships and that woke wild women way too. But I just happen to, most of my experiences with men. So that's how I tend to frame things. But our various sisters out there, definitely,
absolutely. Yeah. Let's see, there was a question. Oh, so what was your first toy and how old were you?
Okay. I'll make sure my mom doesn't listen to this podcast. My mom had basically like a 1970s variety of a wand vibrator. Like, totally bogarted it when she wasn't home. I found it. I was like, what is this? Oh, what do you do with this? Put it here. What if you put it there? Oh, wow, that's really nice. I was not even 10. I don't know how old I was. Definitely. And then I got away with that for a long time. And then one day, I think I didn't lock my bedroom door. My mom walks in and finds me with it. She's like, ugh. And I'm like, that's not what it looks like.
This is not what it looks like. It's like the first thing that comes to mind when you get caught doing something. Yeah. I swear it's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it is, though.
I was just massaging. I had a sore something.
Clit? Yeah, I had a sore clit.
Sore clit. It was a total panic.
Oh god.
So yeah, that's really gross. Still your mom's sex toy, but
it's hers. I bet that was so much more mortifying for her.
I'm sure. I remember a conversation with her well before that, because I said something about what is that thing in your drawer, and like I didn't even know it had anything to do with sex, and so she's like, well, sometimes your father travels. And then she just stops there, and I'm just like, does it open cans? What does this mean? Sometimes your father's out of town for long periods of time. Like, there was no context, and so I use this for, it's just like, sometimes so I was left to wonder, like, okay, when dad is gone, what does mom need? Because I didn't know what anything around that was yet. So I'm like, does it open cans? Does it talk to telemarketers? What does it do?
Yeah, what does it do? That is awesome.
As far as like my own, I'm trying to think, what was, I think I was definitely in my 20s. And I remember going with a boyfriend to I don't know if this is the first one, but this is like one of my first memories. I had a boyfriend, and we went together to like the sex store and bought like one of those little bullet vibes. And so I remember bringing that home and being like, okay, I'm going to try it. And I was like, like 3 seconds. I'm like, what was that? So I remember that. Yeah. And then I think I had a series of those over some time and burned them out. Right. Said once I was once shopping somewhere, and like, you got a free, I think it was like one of the hardware stores, and it was a woman checking me out at the counter. And it was something like, oh, you get a free 16-pack of batteries with this purchase. And I was like, oh, wow, what single mom doesn't need those? And she about fell out. And so I remember that. And then, I don't know, at some point, I think I bought that rabbit thing. It did like this. If you're not watching the video, you can't see it, but it did like this circle thing, like wow, 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 wow. On the, I'm yet to find a man who can do that. So,
well, I feel like it's more like he would need to stay still, and you would need to gyrate around.
That sounds like a lot of work. I just want
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
that sounds like that's what needs to happen.
I want to find the guy who can spin the tip like a whirligig. I mean,
right?
Really, that's impressive. And so I remember having one of those at some point. And then I discovered the GSpot, but not till after I was divorced. So, which by the way, is now, if you haven't looked up anything recently about the whole clitoral structure, they've rethought everything around that. And so basically your clitoris is just like this little piece, and then there's like all this inside stuff, and I don't know, it kind of looks like a life raft. It's really, there's a lot going on in there, and it goes like down the sides of your vulva, down towards like the anus, and there's so much in there. So now they think the G-spot is just part of that whole clitoral
it's the
structure.
Inside.
Yeah, basically.
It's like the other side, so the clit's the outside, and the G-spot's the inside of it. Yeah,
exactly. So we should take that thing back.
That makes sense.
After that Grafenberg science guy who was like, oh, I discovered the G-spot in women. We're like, yeah, just kind of like Christopher Columbus discovered America there, buddy.
Yeah.
Take back and give it a new name.
Yeah, that actually makes sense, because I like, even just relating to the sex I had last night, that it's the similar sensation, like when you're pleasuring the clit, and then also the G-spot, like even though it's like different parts of the body. It's like a similar orgasm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I discovered toys that kind of aimed for that, and that was pretty awesome. So yeah,
Nice.
It's kind of been like an evolution. Now I've got a drawer that like, well, you know, I wouldn't really care if my mom saw what was in my drawer, but in general, if I did have a mom like that, I'd have to have a nightstand packed with Roxanne. Have you heard of the nightstand pact before?
No.
It's when you have a good girlfriend and you have a light nightstand pact. It's like, okay, if I die first, you will go clean out my nightstand so my mother won't see what's in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You'd have to maybe bring like a hefty bag at this point.
I'll just back my truck up.
Back your truck up.
Oh my God. Go through all your drawers.
The sorted ones. And I find like even when you have 10, there's probably one and you just use the one. It's kind of like that mascara, that one mascara you like better than the other 10 in your drawer, and you don't know why you don't get rid of the other ones, but they're just there just in case.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Just in case.
Just in case.
So
I got to answer that question thoroughly.
Yeah. Well, and just continuing with the kind of resource guide for people, you said Bellessa is curated porn.
Yeah.
And
sex
toys.
toys. Yeah.
And then who do you follow on Instagram or in other areas?
I like Kim Anami. She's pretty amazing. And she
Yeah.
does like, I've never done one of her salons, but it is a life goal. And couples retreats in Bali. I mean, who doesn't want to go have sex in Bali? That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And so I really love her. And she's also a vaginal weightlifter. So it's worth checking that woman out just for no other reason than watching her heft a surfboard with her punani. It's highly impressive. And then I also really like Ashe Sundara. I think I'm saying that right. She's on Instagram. And she talks a lot about pleasure and owning your pleasure. And then the woman I was showing you the other night, Roxanne, I can't remember her name. Elian? I'll get you a link to her too, but she even does like online courses focused around self-pleasure. She even has one around like taking sexy selfies. I mean, and taking them for yourself as a way to appreciate your body, because guess what? It's yours. Your selfies don't have to be for other people. Every once in a while, my boyfriend will see a photo on my phone and be like, what's that? Why didn't you send me that? I'm like, I took that for me. He's like, well, damn.
He's like, why are you saving all the good ones for yourself?
I didn't take that to send to anyone. I was just like, oh, I look good like that. I want to take a picture. So on a down day, I can whip that out and be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's important.
So those are several. Elian Whitney, that's her name. Ashe.
Okay.
Kim. Yeah, those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Awesome. Do you have other questions, Bethany? Is there anything else burning in the back of your mind, or anything that we just haven't covered about, owning your sexuality? Or
I'd love to hear more from you, Roxanne.
Let's have some stories. Well, Roxanne's been married for a long time, so
yeah,
I'd love to hear about like keeping sex alive.
Yeah.
In a relationship.
Or answering some of the same questions you asked Tanya, like when you were a kid, like, or what toys you use, you know what I mean?
Well, when I was a kid, this is really out there. Boy, I don't know. I just think about, okay, this is going out on the internet. Everybody's going to know. Anyway.
Zero
fucks given right here.
It can't be worse than stealing your mom's vibrator. Come on.
Right? I mean, yeah.
I win.
Thank you, Tanya.
You're welcome.
I'll share some stories of mine too if you want. There's so many things I could have said.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind when I think about like my prepubescent sexuality. We had an extensive National Geographic magazine collection. And so when my parents were gone, I would go through the magazines looking for pictures of naked people. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what naked people look like.
Curious.
Yeah.
How old
but
were
I
you?
would like earmark. I was like 7, 8, 9, like old enough to be left alone for a little while. And we had a neighborhood. So like my parents would just wander over to the neighbor's house for a couple of hours and I'd be home alone. So, so there was that. And then I grew up, this is where I'm like, I grew up with 3 boys, actually more like 6 or 7 boys. And I was the only girl. And we did a lot of like playing doctor, and it was just all in part of our like building forts and doing this and that. But I do remember a time, and I don't know if this is like trauma, I knew that what I was doing was taboo and it didn't feel bad, but I felt guilty for it not feeling bad.
Yes.
But I was basically like, all the guys were taking a look at my punani. Just like, here, check it out. Feel it.
Yeah, look at it. Yeah. Check it out. But it's so innocent back then, like when you're that young, and it's so normal. And I don't think that like we make it not normal now, you know, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah. And, you know, of course, you know, my relationship with my mom, there's a couple of moments where, you know, she would be naked and she would be hiding from me, which again, that's telling me that I should do the same thing. Yeah. So, you know, basically it was basically like, whatever you're doing, keep it to yourself. I did have a couple of like female friends. We kind of explored, rubbed up on each other. It felt really good. But at the same time, I had this feeling like I shouldn't tell anybody about it. And, and then I got really curious. Sex felt really good. And I just, from a very young age, I think I lost my virginity at 15.
Yeah.
With my boyfriend. And so I just kind of, in my mind, I went from guy to guy because that's how you get pleasured, because I was never allowed to pleasure myself. So it's like, I remember having those thoughts, even after I got divorced. I'm like, shit, I got to find a guy I can have sex with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank God for my friend Melanie, who I moved in with. And she was all about the masturbation, self-pleasuring. And so I figured it out. I was so excited.
I bet.
Oh my God, I made myself come. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. It's like getting the keys to a whole new kingdom.
Right?
Yeah. Or queendom.
Yeah.
Yes, queendom for sure.
So, yeah. And, you know, there've been times in my life, and I think about it like times of severe stress. Here's an interesting one. When my son was in the hospital fighting for his life, and I was sleep deprived and driving between Bellingham and Seattle, which is about a 2-hour drive, like multiple times a week, sometimes in the same day. There was a time, so Children's Hospital has rooms for parents of children in ICU where they can sleep, and then they have a shower. It's really nice, kind of like a hostel for adults. And I remember going in there and just being like, I just need an O. I got to do something, anything.
Right.
So,
and it was helpful for you just to kind of release the stress. And I mean, it's a way to tap into your emotions. So it's like an emotion. It can be a key to an emotional release. I mean, who hasn't cried after sex?
Oh yeah.
Alone or with someone. Like it's definitely, it can open that door when you can't seem to get there any other way.
Yeah, my first marriage, my ex-husband, and, you know, I think he's different now, but, you know, when we got together, he was not comfortable with me giving him head, and he was not comfortable going down on me. So it was always just penetrative. Usually missionary style or cowgirl. I think that's what it's called.
Interesting.
Anyway, but when I met my current husband, he's all about just like, let's just play. Let's, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we're just like, let's just fuck.
Yes.
Like, so he's been great about just like, he's been very encouraging of, you should try this. And there's still a lot of stuff that I haven't explored with him. And I think that's an indicator of just kind of where we are in our relationship after 12, 13, 14 years. I am more open to trying stuff now. Also, our sexual needs have changed drastically. When I was basically a single mom with 2 teenagers when my husband and I moved in together. And I hadn't really explored myself other than that brief period of time when I was single. And so it hasn't been until like the last few years that kids have been out of the house that I've really started to own my sexuality and be much more willing to initiate or like wanting to initiate sex. And now the tables have turned, because it used to be him wanting to have sex all the time. And I was like, I've got, I'm too stressed, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, yay, he's coming home at 4:00. Home. Yeah. And now and men have menopause, or what do they, andropause. So his
andropause.
So their testosterone levels will naturally drop at a certain age. It's a much less of a drop than women's, and there's also plenty of resources out there for men to get it up, but there's very few resources available, like outwardly available, for women who want to feel more sexual, which is a tragedy and a travesty.
It is, because there's this stigma. I was even talking about it last night with a guy that he was saying that he noticed how when he was younger, he had like, oh, if a girl really wants to like have sex, like she's a slut, she's a whore, but like a guy is like celebrated for it,
yeah, for sure.
And I think we're still trying to overcome that
definitely
label, like, as it's negative for us to own our sexuality.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still a thing. It's annoying and a shame, and I hate that it's like that, but it's definitely still a thing. So like even people I think of as fairly enlightened occasionally make comments along those ways, and I think as women it's our job to call them out and go, hey, do you realize what you just said?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not okay. Is that what you really think? Do you think that women shouldn't? Do you think that we're somehow different than you?
Yeah.
I mean, really? Is that what you think? And generally they go, oh, well, no, I didn't really think about it. So, I mean, definitely if you hear that and you feel comfortable, put that in someone's face and hold it up for them to examine and look at. You don't have to be aggro about it like me, but I'm probably
if it triggers you, maybe do it. I don't know.
Exactly.
Why not?
Like, what the hell, dude? Really? Are you slut shaming? This is like 2020. Come
right?
on.
I know. Seriously, throw that
slut
in their
shaming
face.
It's so 2009.
Yeah. So true.
Definitely.
Well, we're getting close on an hour, so I just want to give everybody a chance. There's anything you want to add to the space? Any final thoughts?
I'll add one thing. I just remembered, like, I was thinking about what, I was like in my 20s versus what I'm like now in my 40s. Oh, thank God for my 40s. I love my 40s for that. But I remember in my 20s, like, that was before, it just comes back to that idea of owning your sexuality. Because I remember basically trading sex, not like selling it, but like trading sex for things I really wanted. Like, okay, I just want the cuddling and holding part, but I'll have sex with you because then that'll get me that.
Yeah.
And so I just remember like it took a long time to get kind of beyond that. And that of course came with having more self-esteem and more self-worth, and not needing external validation as much, and not needing male approval and things like that. But that just comes back to the idea of your sexuality is yours, and you get to choose what you want to do with it. If you choose to do that with it, that's fine, as long as it's a choice you're making.
Yeah. An empowered choice.
Full awareness, an empowered choice. I like that. Yeah.
Totally. I think I've had to relate to it that way recently for myself, like realizing, okay, like you can't blame the guy for making you feel a certain way after you have sex with him if you know that he, like, you're willing, you're like putting, like, especially knowing where a guy's at. Like if a guy tells you he doesn't want a relationship, or you know what I'm saying, and then you like when you have sex with him and then you like feel badly about it, it's like that's your fault, it's not his.
Even the best pussy in the world is not going to convert an emotionally unavailable man.
Exactly. And it's not like I'm consciously trying to do that, but like in the past, like I we've all done it. Like that's what we, like as women, like unconsciously we're like you just said, getting our needs met, different needs met through that avenue, thinking that that's how we're going to get it, know? Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that, owning the power.
Yes.
I think a lot of women use their sexuality unconsciously.
Yes.
And that's, just like any human trait, it can be perceived or experienced as, positive, negative, productive, or not productive based on how you're relating to it, you know? So, I think it's important that as women, we encourage each other to own our sexuality.
Right.
Each one of us.
Embrace it too.
Yes. And it starts by exploring yourself. Like you have to get comfortable with yourself first and realize it's not coming from outside of you. Like I love that you said that in the beginning, Tanya. I thought that was brilliant. And you realize how you give your power away to men through thinking that they're the one that's turning you on, when it's really your own turn on.
Oh, I just thought of one more resource. OMG Yes, I believe is the name of it. It's an educational site. It's meant to be used with tablets. And it actually teaches you like how to touch. So it's a really good way, like if you have a hard time explaining to someone what you like. Like if you use it with a partner to be like, this is how you do it. Like practice the touch on the iPad. Like I've read about this thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow. Check it out. But it's
that's really
OMG.
cool.
I'm pretty sure it's called OMG. Yes.
Nice.
Like, oh my God. Yes.
We will double check and have it in the show notes for sure what it is.
All
but yes, that's awesome.
I just love that they make resources these days for all of
Well,
these things.
because like I think they're like we've all talked about is we didn't have that open space to talk about it with other women, like hence how our mothers treated us about it. So therefore it's like we not until our 30s and our 40s are we actually talking about it with women. And so if we could start earlier and create that space for women to actually make those connections and learn from each other, we wouldn't have to create things like that where you have to do it yourself. You know what I mean?
And I'm also
not that it's wrong.
I'm dying right now because I'm trying not to laugh. I'm thinking about like the tablet game where you have to touch it just right. And when you don't, it's like, eh. And I kind of wish I had one of those for my bedroom at some point in my life. Like survey says, don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's not it.
Yep. Yeah. And we have to get comfortable saying what feels good and what doesn't also when we're actually with a person too.
Yes. Yeah. It's true. For sure.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the many gifts that you've given me, Tanya, is the sisterhood of, you know, girls talking about sex and owning it and embracing it. And I encourage all of you out there to find a Tanya in your life. Who,
at least one.
At least one.
Yeah.
Gather them around. Let's be more accepting and understanding of everybody's sexuality, and that we own it, and it's
not
unique to
judgmental.
us.
Yeah,
and we're all unique.
Yes.
You know, just like our hair color and you know how we like to dress. You know how we like to experience pleasure is our own. So
yeah.
I love it.
Absolutely, and celebrate it. Yeah.
Thanks for talking about this, y'all. I really appreciate the chance to talk about this, and I love that this goes out for people to hear, and hopefully somebody had to turn off the podcast halfway through to go love on themselves. I like that idea.
Yeah. Awesome. I know, right? If you're listening to it and you didn't do that now.
Do that now.
Over.
You have full permission to go self-pleasure right now.
That's what we need, right? I feel like that's what we've needed. Permission. You have permission to self-pleasure.
Permission. Maybe even a manifesto.
Yes.
I love it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Tanya. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you. A pleasure. Oh,
it has been a pleasure. I didn't even mean to do that, but it was
perfect. I love it. It's awesome. OMG, yes.
OMG, yes. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.